Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Greater Life, Greater Impact. I'm here with my cute husband, as people said. I'm here with my husband, David Thurgood. Say hello.
Hi.
We're going to do part 2 of healing through sacred sexuality, sacred sexual energies in the body. Again, just a reminder to you guys, this entire year is all about spiritual awakening. And who knew that that creative life force energy would be a part of spiritual awakening. So some of you probably did, but it took me a long time to figure some of this out. And I'm going to preface the class with a great big giant disclaimer. And the disclaimer is we are not experts. We
Only
are
at making mistakes.
yes, we're experts at that. We are not experts by any stretch on this topic of sacred sexuality, but we felt that it would be powerful to ignite a conversation on this and get people thinking about it, and maybe even, depending on how brave we get, share some of our personal stories in regards to our journey um, through intimacy and and how life-changing and spiritually awakening it's been for us. So we will be sharing some of our experiences. We will be opening it up to a group discussion so that you guys can so that we can all just talk about things that are really important along these lines, and just get you thinking, maybe even generating powerful questions you can then take to deity and figure some of this stuff out for yourselves. So that was my disclaimer. We're not experts. We're just here to share experiences for you to consider and ponder on and then take to the Lord. I'm going to start the class with a story. When I was when I was first married, like maybe even within just a few months of being married, I went back up to Canada to reconnect with some of my old friends, and one of them had just recently gotten married, and she had her mother passed away. So she didn't really have anyone to have that talk before you get married, right? I didn't even get the talk when I got married. I had to go to books and figure it out. But
Actually, we went to each other.
yes, we did. We did do that. So, anyways, in talking with one of my friends who had just recently gotten married, and she ended up receiving the talk from her mother in law. And the mother in law said it like this: sex is primarily just for the man. Your job is to satisfy him, and then lay there and take it until it's over.
And
Yes.
How sad is that? Yeah, lay there and wait for it to be over. That, surprisingly enough, is the mentality of a lot of people. A lot of even women have that mentality. And I don't know where that mentality came from, but it's time for it to be Hulk smashed. Here's another little story I thought was kind of cute. I thought we could bring into the conversation. Years ago, in my parents' church congregation in their ward, someone came up to the pulpit to share their testimony. And in her testimony, she opened up with a story about her husband and how she went on and on and on about how he had an infection in his scrotum. And that it was tender to the touch, and she had to massage it, and she had to put oils on it, and um, she just went on and on about his pain and suffering in his scrotum. And people in the audience are snickering and laughing, and not people are getting red over this story that she just won't stop talking about. And then she finishes with her remarks, goes and sits down. Her husband promptly marches up to the pulpit and says, "Sternum." So that's not even the funniest part of the story. The funniest part of the story is that my mother was sitting there and leaned over to my dad and said, "What's a scrotum?" Sorry. Okay, so that's going to lead us right into it's shocking. It's shocking to me how few people understand how their bodies work and what their body parts are and what they're called and how they work and how the body functions and also their companion. How does the body function for them and how do things work for them specifically because everybody's a little bit different. For the most part, we do have similarities, but um, we're all unique and special. And so, getting to know your companion, getting to know their body and how it works, and as well as know your body and how you work and how you function with these sacred energies that flow through all of us and they're designed to is a real vital piece. So, yeah, with that being said, I have a private question. I want you guys to dump it into the chat box. Please, everybody, answer the question if you feel so to do. Go to the chat box, open it up, type or see the little box that says everyone, and there's a down arrow. You can scroll down there and privately text a chat to me, or if you want to and you don't really care about being private, you can send it to me. You can send it to everybody in the group chat. Okay. So here's the question. When was the last time you made love? Chat that privately. How long ago? Was it this morning? Was it a month ago? Was it never? As you type that question, or as you type your answer to that question, I also want you to type this, okay? Some people are saying Saturday night, last night. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Around Valentine's. Last time my husband was in home, made love or had sex? That is a great question. We're going to talk about that actually, because there is a difference. Huge difference. There can be a lot of sex in a marriage, but no intimacy and no lovemaking. But thank you for sharing that. Someone else says 2 days. Someone says December. As close as it gets last night, but I think it could be
even more connected.
Okay, awesome. I think that's it. Okay. On a scale from 1 to 10, actually 0 to 10, on a scale from 0 to 10, how connecting was that experience for you? On a scale from 0 to 10, how connecting was that experience for you? Go ahead and privately type that into the chat. Or you can openly send it to everybody if you want. 10. Awesome. 2. 7. 9. Starts out in an 8 and ends at a 3 or a 4. That's interesting. We should talk more about that. 7, a 2 or a 3. Oh, the question. Okay, sorry. The question is, the first question was, when was the last time you made love and or had sex? The question was, on a scale from 0 to 10, how connecting was it for you? Someone says 6. Last night, but in the last 3 weeks have had several 10 plus experiences. That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
That is awesome, because the more the better, again, because we're talking about this on the perspective of healing, right? And spiritual awakening. So the more that we're learning, the more that we're in the lab, so to speak, experimenting with how this can really wake us up and heal us on every level, then the more the better. So I'm going to move on. Let's see. Somebody else says, I've been married twice. I don't think I ever made love, had an orgasm, or even enjoyed it because of sexual abuse. Okay, we're going to get into that as well. And you know what? This is this is a topic that we don't take lightly. How often is normal? Thank you for asking that. We're going to talk about that. Again, we're not the experts and we don't decide that for you, but we will talk about it. We are going to have an open discussion. So if you want, you can go back to messaging everyone in the group, and you can also unmute if you'd like to participate in the discussion. Someone else says a 3. Okay. Um, we it seems like in our culture, especially in religiosity, we've all been conditioned to have so much shame wrapped around our physical bodies, our sexuality, our nakedness, and even sex in general, right? Yeah, someone says, wow, admitting that sure brought up a lot of emotions. Good, good. Take a look at those emotions, and that's going to set you on a path for discovery for how you can start healing from there. We've been conditioned to have so much shame over our bodies, shame over our sexuality, shame over intimacy. And when you look at books and novels and movies and media and how it's portrayed, there's something actually vitally wrong with the way that intimacy is portrayed in our culture. I hope you guys had a chance to watch last week's broadcast of this class, and that you went inside of the group and took advantage of all the resources that I posted in there the day after that class. There was a book in there that I posted called The Path to Love by Deepak Chopra. And in there, he talks about how love is not going searching out into the world to try to find someone who can make you feel good. That's not love. Because eventually those feelings will run dry. That person will no longer be able to satisfy those feelings in you. And then you'll have to resort to hating them or disliking them or being uncomfortable with them.
Or unhappy with their actions, regardless if you don't like them or not.
Yeah.
With you.
Or being unhappy or unfulfilled or whatever it might be called, right? So love is not that. Love is learning how to find those experiences of intimacy and authenticity and those good feelings within yourself, and then going out and sharing the best parts of yourself with the other person with no expectations, no strings attached, no attachments, just sharing. When you can do that in a vulnerable way and completely expose your vulnerability and surrender to the other person, then two people will experience ecstasy. Okay, we're getting more comments. Hold on, let me just read this next one that came through. I'm only excited for a few days a month. Seems to follow my hormones versus our connection. Where I just lost it. Hold on just a second. Computer, come on. Where will be what in the world? Where I will be good for a few days, then he's gone for a month.
It's gone for a month.
Oh, I think it's he's gone, or it's gone for a month. If it's off hormone times, it's painful and feels like a chore. Interesting comments.
Yes.
Somebody else says, what I might have classed a 10 a decade ago in comparison to now might have been only a 6 or 7 as we have grown closer in the ensuing years. That's interesting. Yeah. So change of perspective, looking back now, hindsight, it's grown. Someone else says, how do you surrender? We're going to talk about that. We will get into that, I promise. If it's painful, it's usually a dryness issue. Okay, awesome. Another comment that I want to bring up before we get into discussing is the divine feminine energy of the planet is starting to wake up. Many of you have noticed that, especially people who are waking up spiritually to their own spirituality. Much of that waking up is due to the fact that the divine feminine is now being recognized and honored, and after thousands of years of being suppressed, right? The divine feminine is powerful. It is erotic and sexual in nature. And many of us as women are noticing too that as we begin to wake up spiritually, that part of us sexually needs to be a part of the awakening. It needs to come alive. It needs to wake up. So many of you are discovering that if you have had lots of trauma or blocks around sexuality, that you need to clear that and heal that and move forward. I typed up some interesting principles or concept. I went looking through some of my notes and some of my books and looked up some sexual symptoms of like sexual dysfunction. So impotence has a lot on a spiritual nature. Impotence has to do with um, fear, stress, anxiety, self-rejection, rejection, maybe from the spouse, loss of the divine masculine, loss of the divine feminine, identity issues, and false identity. That's impotence, typically for men, right? Frigidity. This is for women. Fear, anxiety, stress. Isn't that interesting? Sexual identity issues, uncleanliness, feeling as if you have a lot of shame and guilt around your body and you feel unclean, loss of divine feminine, and a loss of sense of self, actually. When I looked up sexual addictions, such as pornography, it talked about how most people will turn to addictions because they get a dopamine fix when they have that high or that climax, right? We want to feel good because we don't feel something in us doesn't feel good and we want to feel good. So at the end of the day, all addictions are rooted in the need to feel loved or to feel good. And so if you're not getting those feelings or you're not tapping in to where those feelings reside within you, um, you'll have a propensity to addictions, either to chips or or um
M&Ms.
or sex or drugs or substances of any kind that will give you that dopamine fix that will make you feel good, right? Okay, here's some questions. Here are some other questions. Well, actually, let me finish with a statement. At the end of the day, people are looking for connection, they're looking for intimacy, and they're looking for identity. Write that down. They're looking for connection, intimacy, and identity. Who am I? Because oftentimes if you feel rejected in your intimate relationships, you start questioning who am I? Right? Um okay. Here's another question. If you want to type it privately, you can. I recommend you type it for everybody to ponder on and think about. Um what is the importance of sex? Why is it important? Because if people are so miserable and they're not having it very often and it feels like a chore and it's painful and it just stirs up old trauma, why are we doing it then? What is the importance of sex?
Are you opening it up to discussion or is you?
I'm opening this up to discussion. Okay, someone says connection, bonding. Oh, geez, they're coming in really fast. Connection, bonding, and creation, discovering eternal. Can you believe the conflict we're having? Trying to read these. It's crazy. Oh my gosh, computer issues. Connection, bonding, and creation, discovering eternal power, becoming one. It's a divine connection. Yes, it is a divine connection. Thank you for that. I believe that it is godly. I believe that it is how the gods commune. It's an act of godliness. It's an act that drives powerful creation energy through our bodies so that we can step into the kingdom of heaven. You have any thoughts that you want to add on that? What is the
I might be jumping ahead.
no, you can jump.
Well, so I actually just second Janet on this. Um, Here we have sex that Heavenly Father has created for all of us to use. And I think how we approach it is unfortunately not been a healthy way for either myself or for many of us, and had to rethink this through the years, partly because of religiosity in general, regardless of religion that people are in. And that's been a process to overcome and to get through, and then to re-engage in becoming extremely healthy. Because at the end of the day, your relation and how you approach that.
Accidentally muted you. I'm sorry.
I'm
At
muted,
the
so
end.
sorry.
No, you weren't. You were just muted at the end. So finish that last statement.
I just said at the end of the day, um, where you go with sex is between yourself, your spouse, and your God. I mean, ultimately, it's really, truly that.
Yeah. Awesome. Some other people put into the chat, it's a divine connection. It's for procreation, recreation, and creation. Um, yeah. Someone needs muted. Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was perfect. The first thing Satan did was have Adam and Eve feel shame about their true nakedness. That's an interesting concept. I would love, like, we could talk all day about nakedness and how comfortable or uncomfortable you feel in your nakedness before the Lord, or your nakedness before any other human being. Someone else says that the purpose of sex is healing. Yes, we're going to talk more about that as well.
Well, they asked, is it for healing? And it can be. Ultimately, it should be more than healing. It should be empowering to your relationship. Healing is a process that you would be in when you're hurting. And so that's a good starting point. But if someone else is healing, if that's your question, or even if you're healing, that short answer is yes. But ultimately, it should be to empowerment and fulfillment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, um, we actually came together this morning. We were talking about this and started talking about some of the fruits of sexual energy, creative energy, as it flows through us and back and forth to one another. What are the mental, emotional, spiritual, biological benefits of sexual energy? So we've covered some of that already in the chat, but I wanted to add a few extras. So this is the list that Dave and I came up with. Union between two people. I mean, it's bonding, right? Unification, high levels of love, oneness, enlightenment, creation, as somebody said, life force. And literally, when you experience those highs of connecting and coming together in sexual energy, that is literal life force energy that's flowing through your body to rejuvenate the cells, to create healing, as Toby Lynn said, um, to create oneness, to raise the vibration of the energies inside of your body, power, vigor, happiness, self-esteem, spiritual awakening. There are actual um, cultures and philosophies, like Eastern philosophies such as Tantra and the Gnostic teachings, that believe that sacred sexuality is for the purpose of spiritual awakening. That when two people really learn how to channel the flow of those energies, not just for it to happen in the sacral chakra and in the root chakra, but for those energies to flow and be pushed up the body and out through the top of the crown chakra, that it can create a powerful spiritual awakening where two people can step into the divine realm together and experience godliness and awaken spiritual gifts. And I mean, just there's the list goes on and on and on. Other aspects of that list actually also were healing, Toby Lynn, more vitality, more energy flowing through the body. And attraction, physical attraction. You can tell. You can see it written in the energy that people put off on their body. You can tell when someone's been filled with light. And that is really life force. Life force is light energy. And when you are willing to fill your body or fill someone else's body with light in that sacred experience, it's highly attractive. And you can just, go out into public and wonder to yourself, I wonder how much life force gets to flow through that person's body on a regular basis. Let's see. Let's talk about some of the blocks to life force energy. I'm going to open that up to you guys. Then I'm going to pass the mic to David. And let's talk about this for a little bit. What do you feel are some of the things that block sacred sexual energy from flowing, or from you being able to connect in that way often, more often, with your partner or your companion?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is this something, I don't know what you normally do? Would they be interested in unmuting and talking and just having discussion? Or maybe you are, some of you may not, but how would that look if we just unmute?
I would love for you all to unmute and share your answers. Let's do that.
So I'll start with conditioning. Things we're taught that then are built upon, like conditioning to unhealthy beliefs.
Yeah, I agree with that. We have been programmed and conditioned to believe certain things that really simply are not true and not healthy for us, for the flow of energy. There's just so much shaming that goes on. So, yeah.
Anybody else?
I feel like I have a fear of just being wrong, like being in the wrong, like I'm doing it wrong, or not doing it wrong, but like just feeling like it's wrong. Like, where's the line? Where do I draw the line? Have I crossed the line? Where's the line? So that's a real struggle for
We'll
me.
come back and visit that. Can you put that down, being in the wrong, or I can? Let me get a pen. I'll be right back.
That's actually a really good question. I'm guessing that we could. There's one in my office in the basket. I'm guessing we could talk about that for a long time. Mute. Okay. We could talk about that question for a long time. What is right or wrong? What is good or bad? Part of the problem, I think, again, comes back to what Heather said with programming. The programming that your body needs to be covered because it's dirty and it's bad and it's pornography to boys, or vice versa, whatever, right? Like we went in one of the baskets on the top.
I can find it. Sorry.
Oh.
I'm gonna go out and get my book.
Our kids went to a church function where they were going to be swimming several years ago, and they asked these children to wear a t-shirt and shorts over their bathing suits to be modest. Now, I don't want to shame any church leaders or any church in general, but come on. These poor girls are being raised to believe that their bodies are pornography, that their bodies are evil and dirty and bad, and that you should cover up because sex is bad. And so then when you get married, if that's still in your mind that sex is bad, how in the heck are you supposed to just turn that off and change that over? Heather has her hand raised. Go ahead, Heather.
So it's just going to add, because of that conditioning, I think it does cause us to cover even when we're married. Like for years, it was so hard for me to have the light on and not want the blankets completely covering me, because I can be sexual with my husband if the lights are off and the blankets are covering me, but take the blankets off, turn the lights on, and now I'm dirty and wrong. And a lot of that is the covering shaming that went on for years. And I think it's very wrong that not just the church, but the world in general tells women that in order for men to not be aroused, we have to cover our body. Well, what do men have to do to keep us from being aroused? And why is it only a one-sided conversation? And why is that so unhealthy? Because women tend to be the ones that allow or don't allow sex within in a relationship. Like for years, I have controlled when we can and when we can't because of where I'm comfortable with doing any intimate acts, and that's not healthy. And it's all because of telling girls, telling me how I perceived it, that I had to cover to be a good girl.
Good. Good thing.
Perfectly
Yeah,
said.
perfectly said. So I guess at the end of this, and someone else has made a comment that says the other person's anger keeps me at bay, but then triggers the need for me to forgive him more too. Oops, it says unforgiveness is in general probably is a huge core issue keeping people apart. Does any of this stuff that you guys are bringing up, does it sound like one, trust, two, vulnerability, three, willingness to put aside um, your own and maybe and come together, right? Not just you, but both of you to put aside hurt feelings and be willing to be vulnerable and learn to trust each other and hold those vulnerabilities sacred. I mean, how does that feel to you? And we can open this back up or you can type it, but these are questions that I'd like to know what you're feeling from your side.
What is the question again?
The question is, does the inability to um, feel intimate and intimately connected to your companion, does it feel like to you that it has a lot to do with one, trust, two, being able to be vulnerable with each other, not just one to the other, but to both, and to be yoked towards something higher than yourself, whether it's God or whatnot, but to be yoked? What are your feelings along those lines? I'd like to know what people think in general, whether you are willing to voice it or type it for discussion, if you're willing to share.
Well, we're waiting for you guys to jump on and jump in. I loved that Heather talked about not being able to be vulnerable in her own nakedness because she had been taught or programmed to believe that her nakedness was filthy and dirty and bad and wrong. And we have to change these paradigms.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Also, what's a struggle is when you are like for me, before I was a member of the church, I didn't have a lot of direction, so I was very made a lot of bad choices in that, and then was married for 24 years to somebody that held that over my head the whole time, and also made me feel a lot of guilt and, tried to, which worked. I, not knowing that I was choosing to accept that, but so the shame and guilt in that healing, and then being married to somebody that was addicted and abused the relationship in such an unhealthy way, and trying to overcome that has been a challenge. And so, connection for me has always been difficult because it was so abused for so
Yeah.
long.
So agency was stepped on, right? So if sex was perpetuated onto you without your agency, and it was abusive, then that is a very difficult place to go and be vulnerable and completely open and surrender to anybody else after that until you can go and heal that trauma. I mean, that's trauma.
So I guess the question is, how do you start over? Or how do you begin from where you are, even if you don't start over, right? To be able to make your relationship not just good, but great, right? Um, are are there questions along those lines that people would like to know about or discuss? Because I still would like to visit this what's right or wrong. This is a good one that we haven't visited yet, but
Programming.
yeah, programming. But are there things specifically that you would like to visit about regarding this?
Heather.
Go ahead, Heather.
So several months ago, I had this really clear. Oh, so I've been with Janet's group from the very beginning, and it was very helpful. But then there became a time where I kind of had to separate myself from being really involved just because of family dynamics. And several months ago, I got to a place where I just was super upset about everything that was going on in my marriage, my connection with my spouse. And I constantly had this narrative in my head that he needs to this, he needs to this, he needs to this. And one day, as I was reading my scriptures, I had a really clear awakening that maybe it's not him, it's you. And so I went to prayer and I said, okay, so I'm the one that keeps saying he needs this, but he never is sending that same information. I never hear from him. You need to this, you need to this. You fix this, do that. I need you to do this or be this. It was all one-sided. So when I started paying attention to the one-sidedness, I started looking at myself and trying to decide where in me is the unsatisfaction. And really it comes from within me. I'm not happy with me. I'm not happy with how I create in my marriage. I'm not happy with what I bring to the table. I'm not happy with the ways I don't support him because I need. It's the need state. And so I felt really guided to reach out to coaches that have specifically helped me on very specific points. And it has been amazing to me in the last month, the openness that we have felt because of blocks that I have plowed through. And I never imagined that I could be in a place where I think about and desire intimacy all day long, even when I'm working with my kids, even when I'm stressed out, like I'm thinking about it and I'm hoping for it and I'm wanting it. And I never could have imagined, but it was because I did work for me. My husband hasn't changed. The things he does hasn't changed. The ways he comes to the table and offers himself hasn't changed, but it's all within me. So if you're talking about starting somewhere, where do you start? You start between you and God and ask him to help you open up where your problems are. And then don't be afraid to visit them, as scary as they are. Feel your feelings and just admit that they're feelings, and that's all they are, is information, and take it for what it is.
That's true vulnerability. And when you can be truly vulnerable, exposed, raw, and then surrender, you will experience ecstasy. And most people on the planet will never get to ecstasy because they have too many walls and too many blocks up. So thank you for that.
Heather, can I ask you another follow-up question on that? Are you still open, Mike?
Yeah, I am now.
Has your husband noticed a difference?
Yeah. He's actually told me to calm down.
So has he been willing to engage with you and become more vulnerable as you have surrendered and not worried about what was coming back?
So, so a couple weeks ago, we took a trip, just the two of us, for a whole week.
Yes.
And we had some really intimate conversations. And I was for sure that those would stop once we came home, because we have 6 kids and we run a business and it's insane and it's hard. But it hasn't. Like, we've been able to figure out ways to still have those intimate conversations that really spark curiosity, and have conversations that 10 years ago would have been something we would never have considered having, and talking on a very open dialogue. And it's surprising to me how open he is. Like, I can tell there are sometimes I'll bring stuff up that he's uncomfortable with, but he'll sit in it and think about it. And when he feels like it, okay, I kind of have an idea where I'm sitting in this, then he'll talk about it. But he's not one to just jump in and be like guarded,
okay.
protected. Like, he's open.
Yeah.
He's pretty open. He just has to figure out what he thinks about whatever is coming up.
Yeah. So the thing I was going to bring up was, it starts with somebody. It usually starts with you or with me, right? Depending who's going to do it. and go vulnerable. And usually, once you let go of the expectations, is when the other person begins to take notice. And as that, it starts the process of growth and allows you, us, or the couple, to then have those questions. Like, that's the reason I ask, has he become more open or more vulnerable, or it's open to the discussion so you can be more vulnerable? Go ahead, sweetheart.
Yeah, I think the key word there was open. You had to open yourself, and that is scary. It's scary to stand in your nakedness before the Lord, and you did that. It's scary to stand in your nakedness before someone who you feel vulnerable to, because nobody wants to be hurt. But if you want the fruits that are delicious to the taste and very desirable that you think about all day long, um, then there's a price for that, and it is to open your heart and open yourself. Did you have more?
Yeah, I'd like to interject again. Sorry. So one of the things that I learned, or we learned along the way as we came through this, is learning to be charitable and trusting of each other's feelings. Like, if Janet was going to open to me about something or come to me with something, if I wasn't willing to take what she said and hold it sacred, and not make her feel bad for bringing it up, or for talking about it, then why would she ever want to come back to me again, right? Yet at some point, one person, or maybe both, to start it, has to be willing to do that, and then be charitable when they don't respond the way you hope they're going to respond. And charity, true love, is continually loving them with everything that you got, until that vase, so to speak, actually cracks, because there's no guarantee that it's going to crack on your time frame. But how can it happen, right? So who does it? Well, you're the ones on here at this point. So does it start with you? Probably, right? But maybe not. Maybe some of you are in a relationship that you can both be vulnerable, and that can be held sacred. Once you've gone down those roads of being charitable with each other and um, holding those feelings sacred, it starts to open up other avenues in all sorts of ways. Sexually, intimately, true intimacy begins. Sex, so to speak, doesn't end, it just expands. And true intimacy begins, and then the sexual flow uh, just goes crazy.
Yeah, crazy good.
Crazy good.
Okay, so I'm going to answer some of these questions. Okay, I'm going to let you address that because I don't know what you're wanting to talk on that.
They want to address it.
Yeah, we do. There's other comments here that I want to address really quick, and we'll just touch lightly on them. Somebody said, backtracking here, a couple more causes is pelvic floor dysfunction. Yes, I wanted to talk about that, just lightly touch on it. We only have just a few more minutes left, but pelvic floor dysfunction can be caused from sexual trauma. It can be caused from giving birth and having trauma there. Maybe you experienced a very traumatic birth where you had extreme tearing, or it was just traumatic for you. It can cause a ton of any kind of trauma in the vaginal area or the pelvic floor area for men and for women, can cause impotence, and it can cause the inability to have an orgasm, the inability to have an erection, or even release the flow of that energy. So, yes, thank you for bringing that up. Perfectly said. We could talk another whole day just on some of the dysfunction reasons. Sometimes you'll hold tension in the pelvic floor because of past trauma or buried beliefs or emotional stuff, not just physical trauma. Marcy says, my struggle is I worked through my sexual trauma and finally enjoy it now, but my husband is tired and is tired of asking or making the move.
What does that mean by he's tired?
Well, he's probably had to
He's just tired of having to be the one.
yeah. Tired of asking or making the move. Now I need to approach him, and I have a hard time with it. I am feeling my insecurities are arising, and I'm not feeling love. I know I need to feel more love in all areas, love myself, love others, and feel the love of God. You hit the nail right on the head. Yes. But you know what? As you learn to be more cracked open and more vulnerable and release and let go of those walls, let the walls down and let him in,
He's going to come back.
he
if
will
you do.
crack open too. It reminds me of an experience that we had when we were first married. I had this recurring dream, and our sex life was awesome in the beginning. But then, as life and fear and stress and trauma and just the world starts to come crashing down upon you, um, I started to close that part of myself off and protect. I kept having this dream that I was in a cave and I was holding my little babies in the cave. And outside of the cave was a fence with another fence, with a big open field, with another fence, with a giant wall, and with that um, razor wire coiled around the top of the wall. And David was on the outside trying to get in. And I was like, no, he can't come in. He can't come in. So that was a big reason why the flow of creative energy and life force energy started to dip down. Let's go to some of these other messages so that we catch everybody's comments. Another block is believing or wanting it to go a certain way, controlling the situation by
Yes.
either partner. Yeah, controlling the narrative. You got to release, you got to surrender, you got to let go of attachments and expectations and neediness and wantingness. Just let it be what it is. Sexual abuse like incest, gang rape. Yes, that's right. I have to feel safe to be vulnerable. Yes, but feeling safe comes from within. You can't have it. It cannot be gifted to you by someone else. Love can't grow where there's no safety.
So let's go there for a second. That's something to have a conversation with your companion with in a kind, honest way, like approaching kindly, because you can't force someone to feel trusted, right? And you can't just open up if someone isn't willing to hold that trust sacred. So something to think about, because that's a truism that was brought up, but it has to start with a conversation and then taking baby steps with each other in it. And it's not going to just happen overnight. None of this does. It's taken us years, but it's doable.
Yeah. Someone else says, through the act of lovemaking, we can put other problems into perspective. It reconnects you with what is important. Yes. Does it ever? Vulnerability does that. Vulnerability reconnects you with what is important. Oh, there's 9 new messages.
Okay.
We might not get to all of these, but we'll try. Someone else says, I can relate to feeling uncomfortable being naked. I also am afraid or embarrassed that others, like our kids, might hear us or know when we're having sex, which makes it difficult to find. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so true, because you get so distracted and then you cannot relax. You cannot surrender. You cannot completely open yourself to the experience.
What's the worst that could happen?
Mhm.
Right? Really? What's the worst that could happen? They could hear you loving on each other. Big deal, right? So there's a little bit of discretion, but big deal. Your kids need to know that you love on each other. They do. Let them be embarrassed once in a while. It's okay.
Those of you who went and looked at some of the resources that I posted from last week's group, you noticed that I really appreciate a lot of the words from Kim Anami, Kimanami, I believe is how it's spelled. Kim Anami, you can go find her on YouTube. And while she is a little bit crass in her language, hold on. She is a little bit crass in her language and how she expresses things. She has some really good points. And truth be told, listening to a lot of her podcasts and then practicing some of the teachings and the tools that I learned from her really helped me to crack open my ability to allow that energy, that powerful God force, life force energy to flow in me, and to surrender and have those powerful uniting, connecting experiences. Another block is believing or want. Okay, we already did that. Have to feel safe. Did we do that one?
Yep. Keep going. There we go.
From a therapist, setting up rituals from a therapist, setting up rituals together like kissing each other when one leaves or comes home, text them appreciation each day. Oh my gosh,
Yeah, I
this
could
is so
add to that.
sensitive.
If you're going to text, make love with each other over the text. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can be creative as you want.
Yeah, send something juicy if you're going to send them something. Take a weekly bath together while talking for an hour or two, then follow with intimacy. The woman's orgasm comes from connecting to her mind and her spirit, also her body, aka talking to her for sure. Eye contact for 2 minutes, weekly snuggle time that does not turn into sex. Yeah. Without being too graphic,
Right.
we've had conversations before just laying together talking and where the conversation gets really close and connecting and you just feel so much love for the other person. um I mean, there have been times when we have been in that embrace, literally inside of one another in that embrace, and even our lips connected and just connecting like that without anything else, just being still and listening to each other and talking to each other. And those are powerful conversations to have because a lot of stuff will come up and a lot of vulnerability is stripped away, and the relax and surrender is a huge piece. So
We call it holy time.
we do call it all the time. I've had to learn to love myself, release trapped energies that have blocked the flow of life force energy, learned to trust my body and how to communicate with my body and the patterns my mind was running. I now look forward to being in a relationship and participating in divine lovemaking. Yeah, and it is divine when the connections can all be made. I think another component to what can block people from really having an intimate experience in sacred sexuality is self-esteem. So if you can learn how to remove some of the blocks and the inhibitions and the things that are blocking you, kind of like what Heather said, if you can do your own inner work and develop and build your own self-esteem in your sexuality, that's a huge piece. I figured I'd rather have my kids know I'm having sex rather than fighting.
It creates a whole
Um,
conversation for the kids.
How to spell Kimanami? No, her first name is Kim, Kim, as in mother. Her last name is Anami, A-N as in Nancy, M as in monkey, I, A-N-M-I. Two
And
names.
she's crass, right? So if you can get past some of the harsh language and drill down into what she's teaching, you're going to find a lot of things that will be extremely beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to move into this next question, which was how often is healthy in a healthy relationship? Oh, Heather has a comment. Go ahead, Heather, unmute.
I was also going to say about the kid thing. This is a conversation we just had this week, but it's also part of conditioning. If kids don't know that mom and dad are having sex and they're not, like, they're going to learn it somewhere, where would you rather have them learn it? And so, like, we have a lock on our door that sometimes doesn't stay locked and we haven't figured out how to fix it. So yeah, there have been plenty of times our kids have walked in on us and we've had to have conversations, and it's good for them to recognize. I mean, we have older kids, teenagers, and let's be honest, they're going to learn it somewhere. So if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it in a healthy environment where it's truth and not worldly in the ways the world will teach it.
Agreed.
Very good.
Do you have
Thank you.
anything more on that?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to privately or openly, you can type into the chat box, how often is healthy in a healthy relationship?
In a healthy relationship between you and your partner, what's considered enough?
And again,
Any
this
given
is,
week.
there's no right or wrong
Yep.
here. Just what are your opinions on it?
Yep. If your relationship is healthy or you want it to be healthy and good, what does it look like to you? What do you think it looks like to you? Making love, truly making love. And are they typing that in?
Waiting. Depends on the week.
That's too vague of an answer.
I would say just simple connections. Like in the last week, I've realized I love like licking my spouse's lip, but not necessarily kissing. And it doesn't have to be more than that, but that's completely like loving and it's simple.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to respond? We can keep these private. Someone says in my head at least once a week, but when I'm 99 years old, I think I could get away with less. Anyone?
Maybe you want more.
Yeah. You know, we have a lady that was married 5 times where we lived in Idaho. And when our oldest son came off for his mission, she'd outlived all 5 of her husbands. And she said to my son, my oldest son, when he got back off his mission, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm ready to start dating again."
She said, "No, I'm ready to date you now."
Whatever it was, that's right.
She was 99 years old.
And she had I'm sure she had a healthy zest for life.
So I want to give some perspective as I wait for you guys to jump on and just share some of your ideas on this. And again, there's no good or bad, right or wrong. This is between you and your spouse. It can be a real problem when you're married to someone who would like to have it every day, and yet you're someone who could go for weeks without it. And that's kind of how we started out. I was completely satisfied with once a month or less because I had so many blocks. I had birth trauma. My first birth was excruciatingly damaging to my body. So I lost a lot of my sex drive. But also, nonetheless, I also was harboring a lot of old fears about sexuality because of abuse from when I was really, really little. And I didn't know about that abuse until I went to a practitioner, and she helped me uncover a lot of those blocks and helped me heal those old wounds. Plus, getting past the fear of the judgment of religiosity, thinking, well, doing it this way is bad because we have leaders telling us we're not supposed to do that, or doing it this way is the right way. Like, there is no one specific position or one specific act or thing that you do that's good, bad, right, or wrong. Is between you and your companion and God. So when I learned how to release those blocks, when I learned how to change my perspective, my thinking on what my sexuality looks like, what that energy in me starts to look like, and I was able to crack that part of myself open, we went from twice a month to twice a day. And I would say once a day is healthy. In fact, if you go follow the podcast put out by Kim, she'll tell you twice a day is actually vital and healthy. That's not to say that it has to be that way, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with 2 or 3 times a day if you're really feeling that connected to your companion. Like Dave and I, we live on a golf course and we walk the biking path often. We try to do it every day when it's warm outside. And so one time we were on that walk. It takes about 40 minutes to get through that walk. And we had been having a very deeply, profoundly intimate discussion and conversation. And at one point in the walk, I had to just stop and just hold him. And I just wrapped my arms around him, and we both sobbed and cried into each other's arms because of the nature of the conversation that we were having. And it was so intimate. It was so connecting. It was so loving and so vulnerable and raw. And we both said at the same time, practically, "I feel like I've just made love to you." And we did. Like, our spirits were communing in that moment, without the bodies really needing. Sex is not just about bodies. It's not about 2 bodies coming together. It is really literally about that connection, that rawness and vulnerability.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I can't even add more to that.
Yeah.
On that one, but
So I'm going to ask you the question: what do you feel changed? Like, how did we go from once or twice a month to a couple times a day? Like, what
I think it was a couple things. I don't think it was any one thing. I think part of it, um, I've always had a healthy sex appetite. I've always really loved my wife. Even with our struggles, I've loved everything about her. I've loved who she is. I've loved wanting to be a part of her intimately and everything. Um, but like all marriages, they have struggles, right? And and I wasn't acknowledging, frankly, part of the things that were causing the struggles in our marriage. Um, and she had blocks also that I had no awareness of, and she wasn't willing to share some of those things, or some of the things she wasn't even aware of herself. And so she was truly blocked in those things. And I always kept thinking, let's just fix this, right? She's something to be fixed, like she's broken. And she's not broken, but took me years to figure out my wife wasn't broken, right? She was somebody who we hadn't figured out how to really become intimate at a very deep level on. And and I remember we had these talks, and it felt like it would never go really much more than surface level, and then we'd be back to the old ways again.
Can I interject?
Absolutely.
It's because in my mind, I was thinking, this is too painful. It's too hard for me to go there mentally, emotionally, and physically because I didn't want to be touched. It was too vulnerable for me. And so it was exhausting for me to have to go there continually. And I was like, just let's get this over with so I can go on with my day or go back to sleep or whatever. That was in my head. And like, I don't have that anymore because I can't keep my hands off him now. But anyway, that was in my head.
And I got to the point where I was so tired of being the one to approach that it just felt tedious. And someone made that same comment. I know exactly how that person's feeling, because at some point you get tired. And I know there's two sides to the story, so I'm not trying to make any side look right or wrong. I'm just sharing. Uh, but at the end of the day, we weren't equally yoked either to God, a higher thing, or to each other. And so it had to start with a breakdown of understanding how to become yoked. And one of the things that I couldn't clue in for years was the things that really made her desire me was my desire to be yoked to Christ, to a higher source. And I finally began to take that to heart. And then she was able to around that same time to start looking inward, and was able to get help with things relating to her being cracked open. It just didn't happen overnight. We struggled through it, and we still work through things, but this has been a process over a year and a half long, couple years long in this, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, one thing I did not know about myself was that the biggest turn on for me, like what turns me on the most, is spirituality. I'm a highly spiritual person and I live up in the crown chakra often. So, when he connects with me on a spiritual level, I I can't keep my hands off him. And I didn't know that I just thought I was broken. So like he would ask me things like, well, what turns you on? What is it that you want? What do you like? And I'd be like, I don't know. Like, but I did notice that oftentimes when he would come home from work and connect with the kids, or I don't know, just show his spirituality, that side of himself, it was very endearing to me and it was very connecting to me. It was something that ignited intimacy or the desire for intimacy. And I just wanted him so badly and it took us a lot of years to discover that in each other. But who knew? Like, who knew that spirituality could be a form of foreplay, really?
And vulnerability,
And
was she didn't trust, my ability. And I don't blame her, but we had to come through this. She didn't trust my ability to share her vulnerabilities. She didn't trust. She didn't trust my ability to share her vulnerabilities. She did not. And there's things that I didn't trust, that I was vulnerable in, that I didn't think that I thought it would trigger her to the point where it would just bust us apart. And all this stuff has come recently. Not all of it, much of it has come even recently. The more vulnerable we've learn to become, the more I can share with her and be more vulnerable and raw, because I trust that she'll hold it sacred and that it won't be used against me. In fact, it becomes something that binds us together.
Do you want to address that question?
Where's the question here? Which one?
If that is my desire to be equally yoked with Christ and my spouse is against Christ, how can I get that?
So I can't speak to your situation, but I can speak to something that's maybe a little bit less and go from there. We can force no person to do those things that we want, just like she couldn't force me and I couldn't force her. And whether it's Christ or something higher, you can start where you're at without expectations. You can control you. You can't control anyone else. Everybody has absolute agency. Now, this doesn't make it an easy thing, but it does give you a base point. If you can go there, you can begin to learn charity, true charity, that you don't hold expectations, that you will love, begin to love unconditionally. And like, was it Heather that talked about it? When she could look in at her inner vessel and learn to work on her own self and then hold no expectations, that's usually when things begin to start to move. The other person, they tend to begin to notice things. It opens the door for conversation. It's not a quick train usually. It's usually slow, but it's real. It's very, very real. You have more that you want to add?
That was perfect. That actually was perfect. We're already at the top of the hour, so I think maybe what we'll do is just open up the mic and finish this off with maybe just a few minutes of questions. If anybody has questions or comments that they would like to share, please unmute your mic and let's end the class with what are your final thoughts, takeaways, questions, comments, concerns.
I personally really appreciate a man's willingness to be open and vulnerable and to share with us his side of it. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Been a pleasure.
Janet.
Yeah.
We don't have time. No, we don't have time this time, but I was thinking that you were going to, and if I wonder if it's a possibility to do next week a healing energy, on this. Like today we've been doing a discussion. I wonder if we're able to do an overall class on healing these energies within.
Yeah, we were going to try to do that at the end of this class, but this was a discussion that could go on for days. So we will do part 3, and it will be a guided meditation, and you'll learn how to figure out what some of your blocks are. Some, because we have many around sexuality, but I'll take you through that. Also the replays to this and more. Like there's so much more. We could go so much deeper. Is going to be posted into the members area. If you go to my website, and it's all over inside of the Facebook group, you can purchase the members area, and I'm going to be loading other top secret videos in there. We just don't have time to cover it all in this year-long class, and so I'm going to be dumping other resources and other tools for healing inside the members area. You guys can go pick that up if you want it. Yes, we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions or comments, or thank you for that though, Bambi. I appreciate it.
It's good to talk to you, Bambi.
I have a quick question.
Good to talk to you too.
So if I am having issues with it's all about thoughts, I think. I shouldn't say all about thoughts, but if I have intimate thoughts or sexual thoughts, whether it's about my husband or about other people that I see or whatever, and I'm so focused on pushing those out of my mind because I don't want them to become planted in my heart, because I feel like is that wrong? Does that make sense? Like at what point do you say, I invite that to come? How do you let it flow through you?
You're
to
married
then,
you're married to a husband right now, correct, right?
yes.
Is there any reason why you'd want to push anything out of your head regarding sexual intimacy with your husband?
Um, that's a good question. Just because I feel like it falls flat. Like I feel like, what's the point?
What is the point? What, from your perspective, what is the point? Do you have a healthy relationship with your husband? Is my first question.
I would say in some aspects, but when it comes to intimacy, that's been a real frustration for us because it's like I can tell that he wants it and he tosses and turns and then keeps me awake all night long. And so then I am so exhausted all the time that then is we've just kind of gotten to this snowball effect to where I'm exhausted, but then he wants it. And I'm just like, I am so tired. Can you please just let me sleep? And then he doesn't because he tosses and turns all night long. Does that make sense?
Well, so I'm just trying to understand your question. Is your question about whether or not you should have sexual thoughts regarding him and get them out
Yes.
of your mind?
Like
Is that your question?
I feel like from a very young age, just because of abuse, I've always had those sexual thoughts bombard me. And so I feel like I don't know what's like, how do you differentiate what's okay and what's not?
Can I do that one?
Take it.
Differentiating what's okay and what's not. I've asked that question actually before, and the Lord said to me personally, you can take this to the Lord and ask the same question. Honor agency, stand in charity, and have your eye fixed on the Lord and on his glory. If those three elements are in place, it doesn't matter what your thoughts are at that point. It doesn't matter what your acts are at that point, because it's all about the intention. What is the intention? If your intention is to love on your husband and you need specific thoughts to be there in order for that to play out, in order for you to be able to pour into him, then the intention is pure. As long as you're honoring agency, standing in charity, and your eye is single to the glory, the rest of it doesn't matter. There is no good or bad, right or wrong act or thought, as long as those three elements are in place. Those are the parameters. And as long as that's in place, you can go wherever you want to go or need to go.
That's
If you need to have specific thoughts in your mind play out in order for you to pour into him, and what's wrong with waking up every morning and making love with your partner? Like, why wouldn't you want that?
What do you want on the buffet table, right? Take those three things that she just talked to you about and mentioned, and keep that in mind as you approach it. And it's fully between you, your companion, and the Lord. And go there confidently, and go there sensually, and go there knowing that you're going to be backed by Heavenly Father.
Here's something else to consider, and I don't know if any of you other females out there struggle with this, but I struggled mightily with sex. In my mind was, I'm constantly having to give. Like, I've got this newborn baby, I've got 4 other children, and they all need something and want something from me, and everybody's taking. And then at the end of the day, I'm cooking dinner and helping with homework, and the baby's crying and needs to be nursed and sucking off of one side. And I got a husband comes home who wants to suck off the other side, and I'm like, I am constantly giving and not receiving anything back in return for myself, right? Sorry, that was a little crass. I didn't mean that, but the problem for me in my mind,
hilarious.
the problem in my mind was, what in my mind was, I don't have it in me to give 1 more ounce of myself. Like, I'm constantly giving, giving, giving until I'm sucked dry. And when I learned how to change the paradigm for myself and realize, you know what, this kind of a connection that especially that's intimate, where if I can convey to him what my desires are and what my needs are, and if I can allow myself to surrender and be vulnerable and completely and totally cracked open, there's a lot there for me to be able to receive, and it's empowering. it boosted my self-esteem. It cracked open my spirituality. It cracked open my ability to connect not just with him, but with my children and other human beings. It created more life force and vitality and energy in me. It allowed us to be equally yoked. Like the fruits just go on and on and on. So my question now is, why wouldn't you want to connect in that way twice a day or 3 times a day? Because now I do feel like I'm both giving and receiving. In fact, I feel like most of the time I receive more than I ever give out.
We understand there's time constraints. It's not like it's all that happens. Her point is more about what you feel, and it's up to you to decide with you and your companion, whatever that looks like. Even if it looks like once a week or twice a week, that isn't for anybody to decide but you. But there is no right or wrong in it, in how often, when it comes down to truly connecting with one another.
Yeah. Okay. Unless anybody else has anything else. Okay, Heather?
So I just wanted to thank you for posting about Kim's website. I've kind of been exploring with her podcasts and some of her YouTube videos this week. And I would add, Ellen, go there and learn a little bit about the energy healing, since some of your trauma has to do with sex. Go there and listen to some of the things she talks about, because it is so eye-opening and stirring. If you can get past the crass of it, which, I'll be honest, has been a little hard for me. And
Yes.
I have had things that she has brought up, I have desired to share with my husband. And I told him, you have to just listen to what she's saying and not what she's saying, because there is so much truth in what she's sharing that I feel like you can really heal sexual energy by following some of the things. Like, I've only listened to a few things this week, and it's stirred so much in me, where it's created a lot of questioning and pondering and creating power to the what ifs. What if I could X, Y, and Z? What if I couldn't X, Y, and Z? Like, it's amazing. So my suggestion would be, go check that out, Ellen, because it might change something in you to see it differently.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I love that woman, and I don't even care about her crassness or her language anymore. I don't even have a problem with it anymore. It's just words for what she's trying to convey, and what she's trying to convey has really healed so much in my relationship with my husband. Like, it has cracked us both open to a side of vulnerability that was not there before. Marcy says, Janet, how do you step into a place of receiving as a mom? I give so much, and I do get so tired. I think it is that exactly what we're talking about. Cracking yourself open to being totally and completely vulnerable to your partner. Eventually they will respond to that and be able to give.
Can I interject?
Mhm.
Have this conversation with your husband,
Yeah.
that you would like to, if this is indeed what you would like, that you would like to do this and do more of it, and that you would like maybe more help from him, so that you can be in a place of doing this. It's gonna matter, is my guess. If he really loves you, it's gonna matter to him that you would like to do this, and that you could use some help in helping you, so that as all this unfolds and as you guys yoke up better, that he will see you in a light like that, so that you're getting help.
So my takeaway at the end of this broadcast or this class, as we sum everything up, is, do you want to look 20 years younger? Do you want to have health and energy and vigor and vitality? Do you want to feel equally yoked and have deep, meaningful connection? Do you want to experience high vibrational love that you've never experienced before in the form of charity and vulnerability? Do you want to be satisfied in a very extremely pleasurable way and experience that all day long? Like, when I first started to change my mindset mindset about all of this, and did some healing, did some learning through Kim, Anami, and other places, other resources. Um, when this first started to happen for me, I would have orgasms all day long. They would ebb and flow in and out of that ecstatic feeling. And I learned how to channel that energy throughout my entire being, throughout the entire body. And you know what? It's fun to talk about these things together with your companion. It's fun to practice them together to get to a point where you can have the experiences that you're desiring to have and see what's possible. That's fun. The doing it the other way, the world's way, where it's just obligatory and you're obliged to just lay there and take it, that's not fun. That sucks for both people. Nobody wants a spouse that's just laying there taking it. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be the spouse that's in that mindset. So learn to change your mindset, get yourself educated, learn to release the guilt and the shame around your physical body and around this most sacred and godlike act that will take you into higher levels of charity than you ever imagined you could go.
Stop operating in shame. Stop operating in shame. Keep your eye single with your spouse and with God, and then go figure out what's on the plate and stop operating in shame.
And my takeaway word for the end of today is surrender. If you can learn how to be vulnerable, exposed, while you are relaxed and surrendered, you will experience ecstasy. You will, hands down, no questions about it. Toby Lynn, did you have something? No?
Sorry, I was just thinking of how this is such a terrestrial conversation. It's not telestial, it's terrestrial. Very cool.
You are exactly right. If you want to be spiritually awakened by powerful life force creation energy, this is how the gods create. And this is not just a terrestrial conversation, it is celestial in every sense of the word. And why wouldn't the adversary come down to this dimension, into this mortality, this probation, and convolute it and turn it into something filthy and wrong, something that we feel so much shame around? Why wouldn't he do that? It makes perfect sense. Like, this is something that we are to be enjoying and participating in because it is godly. And it will allow you and your companion to step into the realm of the gods, if you allow it to. Okay. Thank you guys so much for your vulnerability today. We talked about some really awesome things that are tender and dear to our hearts, and I'm sure to yours. And so if you feel like you got a lot out of this, you're not going to be able to share it because there won't be a replay to this in the group. It will be posted immediately in the members area, but you can definitely send the word out and tag somebody in the post or invite them into the group so they can participate in this learning as well. Heather, did you have something?
Janet, is the members group something that is a yearly resubscription?
Nope. It's a one-time purchase, and you get a lifetime access to all of 2021's broadcasts and handouts, and then more. Like, I do post additional resources and insights in there on top of these classes, because these classes now are a free resource to all who want to participate. But the members area is a paid for. You have to pay for that to get access.
So like 2020, I was included in that group, but 2021 would be a different thing, right? Yes. Okay. That's good.
If you
Thanks.
go to my website too, anybody can purchase all the replays from 2020 as well on a thumb drive. And it's fairly inexpensive and reasonable if you want to start there. But last year's topics were a lot different than this year's. So you definitely want to get both. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being on here. We had a great participation, and just be prepared for next week. I will take you through a guided healing experience with sacred sexuality, learning to uncover blocks and learn how to surrender. So it'll be worth jumping on at that point. All right. Do you have anything else to add?
Nope. Thank you. It was very enjoyable.
Mwah. All right.
That was even better.
See you later, everybody. Have a blessed rest of your day, and we love you. Mwah.
See you later.